Welcome to the Happy Home Birth Podcast, your source for positive natural childbirth stories and your community of support, education, and encouragement in all things home birth and motherhood. We talk about trusting your instincts a decent amount around here, but what does it look like to learn how to lean into those instincts? Hey there, happy home birthers, and welcome to this week's episode of the Happy Home Birth Podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Fusco, and this week we are speaking with Lisa, who found the confidence to trust her instincts during pregnancy, which has changed her trajectory both as a mother as well as an entrepreneur and coach. Lisa Villani is a rebellious doula, sassy sales coach, hip hop dancer, and mama to her spunky son in Buffalo, New York. She's married to her ride or die and believes fiercely in building a life where both parents get to thrive. After an unmedicated out-of-hospital birth cracked her wide open, Lisa made it her mission to help women rewrite the narrative of motherhood, money, and identity. A survivor in every sense of divorce, disordered eating, and a medical system that tried to silence her, she now stands as the loudest voice in the room for women ready to own their power, whether they're giving birth or selling their offers. She's also the host of the Loudmouth Lisa podcast, the best podcast name I've ever heard, because playing small was never an option. There is no doubt in my mind that you are going to end this episode loving Lisa as much as I do. So let's waste no time and jump in. Please remember that the opinions of my guests may not necessarily reflect my own and vice versa. And this show is not medical advice, it's an educational tool. So continue to take empowered responsibility for your health and your family. Lisa, I am so excited to have you on the Happy Home Birth podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Caitlin. Oh my gosh, I just have to say that I admire the crap out of you. Your voice and your vibe, it's really grounded. And I feel like there's this integrity about you, and it stuck with me because recently I actually got to see you speak live at a birth worker event not too long ago. And I just have to say, because I can, like, your podcast is such a gift to this community.
Wow. Thank you, Lisa. I have to return the absolute adoration. I think that you are just so wonderful. It has been so nice to get to know you, to see your content on social media. You are incredible. So I am thrilled to have you here and for my audience to be able to hear just how much wisdom you have to bring to our conversation, both about motherhood, about sales, which you are just a absolute wizard at. It's going to be really, really fun. So would you mind just taking a moment to kind of introduce yourself and your family to the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of a mixed bag. I'm Lisa Villani, and I'm known as the Lisa V. And I'm a sales coach, but I'm also a birth advocate, especially autonomous birth. I'm a mentor for doulas and mompreneurs who really want to be bold and really want to be profitable without losing themselves in the process. And I live in Buffalo, New York with my hardworking soulmate and my 3.5-year-old son. And really, I love helping women own their voice and trust their instincts.
Wow.
And that's what I'm all about.
That's beautiful. That is incredible. Well, let's talk about how this began. So you were telling me before we started that really motherhood was something that launched you into everything else. So can we go back to that? Can we go back to this beginning? How did you enter into motherhood? What was your first pregnancy like?
Yeah. So really, before I got pregnant with my son, Enzo, I had a spontaneous miscarriage. And that was my first ever experience with pregnancy loss. And it was during COVID. And even though that grief was like already really heavy, because nobody goes into the excitement of getting pregnant and starting a family thinking that they're going to go through something like that, right? But the aftermath of that was really hard on me because I was actually shamed. Like, truthfully, people didn't say it outright, but the insinuation was there. Like, I must have done something wrong. And I actually had a doctor suggest that maybe I got sick with COVID because I wasn't being careful enough and, I wasn't following the rules, and how I had like somehow brought it on myself. And I was trying to make sense of all of it. And really just, I felt like every time I looked around, people were throwing fear and guilt at me, and it was not helpful. And a lot of that was because I chose to dance during COVID. So I've been a dancer all my life. And I knew that I had to stay connected to myself somehow during that very scary time. And so I danced every week in a mask because it was mandated, because I needed something for my mental health and for my physical health and my sanity. And I got a lot of flack for that. And people side eyeing me and questioning me and saying things like, should you really be doing that while pregnant? And so I think that the reason I bring this up, it seems like it's out of left field, but I started to really kind of recognize that the only person that was going to take care of me was me. And that even with judgment, I was going to have to just do what I felt was best. And that kind of just planted these seeds of what self-trust really looked like for me, even when it was messy as hell.
Wow. I mean, what an amazing thing to learn, though,
Yeah.
so early on, to
Mm-hmm.
understand, you know what, I'm going to make decisions. And no matter what those decisions are, they are going to be met with somebody thinking it's wrong.
Yeah.
So maybe I should make the decisions that are best for me and not worry so much about what these other people think, because they don't have to live with this. This is my thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is such an easier thing said than done, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And that's a lesson that I think that sometimes it takes us. Well, I mean, there's iterations of learning it probably too. You know, you learn it one way and then you have to go learn it another way and then this way and that
Yes.
way over time. But to be introduced so early to this idea, this concept, that's really incredible.
Yeah. And I think like people see me now and they'll say things like, Lisa, you're bold and outspoken. And they'll see me coaching doulas on sales and kind of like assume that I've always been a confident woman.
Mm.
But I always say like my confidence was built in the fire.
Yeah.
Like it was built when I divorced my first husband in
Mm.
2015, despite being in a very like traditional Italian family where divorce wasn't even said out loud. Okay. It was built when I committed to recovering from a lifelong eating disorder. And that was during my postpartum with Enzo. So that was a really intense experience. And then it was built when and I know we'll get to this, but I fired my OB at 29 weeks and I had to figure it out for myself. So I think that your confidence and your self-trust is rebuilt again,
Mm.
just like you just said, like piece by piece, again and again. Even when I birthed my baby at home recently, a missed miscarriage,
Mm.
it's rebuilt over and over and over. And I want women, mompreneurs, all of the women in this community to just hear that and trust that it's messy and that's okay.
Right. Right. It doesn't have to look a certain way.
No.
Wow. Okay, so you began this motherhood journey with miscarriage
Yeah.
and difficulty through that. How did that impact attempting to become pregnant again for you?
Truthfully, I really trusted, I don't think I had the words at the time, but I really trusted, like, I don't know how this is going to sound, but like the science. Like at this point, I was so immersed in birth education and, you know, understanding research and evidence and all the things. And I really trusted that it wasn't my time. Like I trusted God, to be honest. Like, and there was a comfort there. And like I said, at the time, I don't think I could have articulated that, but I really was like, okay, you know, this soul is came to me, but not meant to be earthside. And so really like we kind of dove back into trying because we had this like trust.
Mm.
If I really had to be honest, both my husband and I. Yeah.
Wow.
Which I'm
Wow.
grateful for.
Yeah, that's so beautiful to be aligned.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what was that like? What was conception like? What was the time and then
Yeah.
how did that unfold?
Really, really fortunate. And I know this isn't everyone's story, but with both of those pregnancies, quick conception, you know, probably like first try, second try. And what I will say though is there had been a lot of fear and guilt again around like, am I doing everything perfect? Am I following all the rules? Which has literally been like the story of my life. Like, no, Lisa never follows the rules ever. And so it was kind of one of those things where you had to like look at yourself in the mirror and be like, do I have to change the way that I live right now? Or is it the rules are the problem? Right. And so there was a lot of anxiety in that first trimester and into the second trimester. And I did luckily have like a big shift. But I think that, again, when you're in the middle of it, you don't quite know how to articulate. But I think that that miscarriage kind of snowballed into some extra anxiety. And then the judgment from the medical providers, again, kind of really like added to the stress and the anxiety. And I'm glad that I was able to pull myself out. But it was dark first trimester because the fear kind of took over.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you said, this is a time that fear is kind of rampant anyway. Like we're
Yeah.
in COVID era, everything is
Mm-hmm.
different. So what was that like in terms of working with your provider? You said that you switched at 29 weeks. So sounds like were you planning a hospital birth, like a traditional kind of mainstream hospital birth from the beginning?
Yeah, so unfortunately, where I live in Buffalo, New York, the landscape is pretty destitute. So at the time, I really wanted a home birth, but that wasn't even an option because we only have one home birth midwife. She was doing like a special certification of sorts and was literally like not an option.
Mhm.
So the second thing that I kind of planned was a birth center birth. And there's only one in our area, and there was no opening at the time. So in my mind, I was like, well, I'm going to have the birth center birth. Like, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to have it. And this was before I even knew about free birth. And so I was still doing the OB care because technically I wasn't a patient at the birth center just yet. And so it was kind of like in my mind, I was like, I'm doing this because it's my first pregnancy and I do want to check in on the milestones, anatomy scan, thing like that. That was helping my anxiety at the time. But in my gut, I was like, but this is not like a hospital birth was never the plan, even though it was kind of like from the outside looking in the plan.
Right. That makes
Yeah.
total sense.
Thank you, because it doesn't sound like it does, but I appreciate you understanding.
Yeah, no, I get that. But you had this feeling, this
Mm-hmm.
sense of no, I'm going to be giving birth at this birth center. So
Mm-hmm.
how did that actually come to be? How did you become did they have an opening?
Yeah, I was relentless. I called very often. I did everything I could to like get in touch with the woman who owned the birth center. She's like a legend here and just an incredible advocate. And I just kept trying to put my name like on her radar through different friends, people in the birth world, because this was all before I was even really technically a birth worker.
Right.
And so it was very new to me. And I just kept planting seeds, kept planting seeds. And then when I kind of hit this turning point in my OB care, I reached out one final time. And at this point, I had her number and she was very open to like texting with patients and things like that. So it wasn't like, it sounds really intrusive, but it wasn't. And she finally just responded. And I think I just hit like a heartstring. And so she like doubled up my guest date with another mama. And we all just like had the conversation of like worst case scenario, like you're both in labor at the same time, like we'll have to have a plan B. And I was like, what are the odds of that? I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. So it really worked out. And she has been an angel in my life ever since, actually. So again, it was just kind of God was like, we're going to figure it out. We don't know how, but we're going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just this divine plan
Mm-hmm.
and your consistency played such a part in that. That's so beautiful.
Which comes back full circle like over and over and over.
I believe it. I'm excited to hear how that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you did mention though that first trimester felt dark,
Yeah.
kind of moving into the second trimester, but something shifted. Could
Yeah.
you tell us about that shift?
Yeah. Specifically, there were these like gut instincts of mine that I would kind of like check in with, but then, you know, ignore if I'm being perfectly honest. I'm like embarrassed to even say that, but I know that it's welcome here. It's kind of just like, I wasn't a pro at listening to my instincts yet, especially the maternal ones. And so I was put through the gamut of genetic testing, with no predisposed reason, no history in my family, and no sit down conversation with me about like why we would do those. And it was really like when I noticed the blood panel and how intense it was. And then we went down this rabbit hole of being a cystic fibrosis carrier and like, what does that mean? And then the insurance wouldn't cover the tests for my husband. And we just like, all of a sudden, I was like, how did we end up here? Like, it's like I blinked my eyes. Someone else was kind of making decisions for me. And I was like a deer in headlights. And that was probably the first marker. And then as we kind of moved through these regular routine prenatals, I would come in with and I know I was like really one of those difficult patients, if you will. I had like 3 pages of questions, right? And I was just completely dismissed, like actually like eyes rolled at the thought of having to sit there and answer those questions. So I got better at kind of like showing up with my top 3 and like being very strategic. I felt like my prenatal appointments turned into a chess game, which was disgusting, if I'm being honest. So those were those little gut instincts where it was kind of like, this doesn't feel right and I can't quite put words on it. And I don't really know any better, but something isn't right. And those little things kept coming up. And then the icing on the cake was when I started to kind of like bring my birth plan into the prenatal to review and make sure that we were on the same page. And I started getting half answers. I like to refer them as half answers. So it was kind of like they weren't saying, the OB wasn't saying, yes, we honor your wishes in this situation. And they weren't saying like, no, that's not our policy, but it was like an in-between answer. And I was like, I am not comfortable with the vagueness of this. This is a really big deal to me. And I fired that provider at 29 weeks. And that was right around the time that I reached out to the birth center and we got everything transferred and all the things. So it was a beautiful end result, but it was tricky getting there.
Yeah. I mean, it almost feels like you had to go through that, like you had to go through the difficulty of this isn't right. I know this isn't right. And I'm going to make the decision to listen to this intuition that's saying this isn't right. I'm going to fire the care provider. And then, like this new situation comes into being. That's really incredible.
Thanks.
Wow. Okay. So then what was that like, switching from that scenario to this midwife who's kind of a legend in your area?
Yeah, it was a breath of fresh air because I dove right into what she called centering of care. So we would do our prenatals in a big group, and there was probably like 8 couples, and we would do that in community in the evening. So my husband could be there, and she allowed the partner, whereas with all these other prenatals, I was going in solo because of COVID and all the rules and the mask and all the things. And it just felt so incredibly sterile. And I would get like white coat syndrome the minute I walked in to one of these hospital facilities. And so it was such a breath of fresh air. And I almost felt like the anxiety just like melt away after the very first community visit. And even, we each got a little bit of time with the midwife. And when I would get my little bit of one-on-one time, like if I had 45 minutes worth of questions, she did not rush me. It wasn't like, oh, I've got to get to so-and-so. Like I knew that she was going to sit there and take the time. And we had some incredible lengthy conversations and it was life-changing. And I knew that everything had worked out the way that it was supposed to.
Wow.
Yeah.
It really sounds like it. So you've got, at this point in your pregnancy, you have this massive shift that is just full of beauty and light and joy and ease. What was the rest of that time of your pregnancy like, other than this prenatal care, which was absolutely beautiful?
Yeah, I really felt like I started to live my best life. Like I was dancing every single week. I danced up to 38 and a half weeks and felt very connected to my baby because we had that physical time together as well.
Oh.
And I didn't miss a beat with that. And I felt really strong. And I recognized immediately that like once that anxiety piece was removed, I could really like step into the role and start to get really, really confident around my birth vision and all the things that I wanted and the way that I wanted to feel. I ended up being GBS positive, and I remember being like, okay, the curve balls are going to keep getting thrown. And then I had just was so grateful to have a provider that was like, if you don't want antibiotics, that's your choice. And so it wasn't an easy decision to make, but I had a lot of instances where I was able to do what felt right for me. And so the rest of the pregnancy was really beautiful. Spent some time in Florida. I went to a New Orleans Bills game because if you know me, I'm like a football fanatic. So I did a little traveling, and it was just a really special time.
Oh gosh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what was it like then as you are on the precipice of labor? How did you go from pregnancy to actually going into labor?
Yeah. So, funny thing was that my baby's guest date was 2422, which was cool. And the only caveat with that was I had two things that I was like, these curveballs are going to somehow surface. I know it. Number one, my husband is a commercial snowplower. So he does like big contracts, hospitals, factories. Like if there's a blizzard, he's getting called, even if it's hours away, heavy
Oh,
equipment. So I was like, with my luck, it's going to be some winter storm. Like there's going to be some crazy storm. And my biggest fear was like, my husband's going to be sleep deprived for my birth.
mhm.
So number one. And then number two was the Buffalo Bills were doing really, really well after a streak of horrendous seasons. And I was like, the Bills are going to get into the Super Bowl and I'm not going to be able to go because I'm going to be like days from giving birth. So those were like the two jokes, the running jokes through the whole pregnancy. And sure enough, on the morning of February 4th, 2422, I woke up at 4 a.m. and I was like, oh, I'm kind of feeling some things, but it's probably nothing. I went to the bathroom. I had like diarrhea and I went back to bed and I slept until 8 a.m. I'm not an early riser. So I got a great night's sleep. And then I woke up at 8 and I was like, oh, there's still some things going on, like some feelings and some sensations. And but it's probably nothing. It's probably prodromal labor or Braxton Hicks or like all the things that they tell you a first time mom is going to have, right?
Anything but labor.
Anything, like literally anything but labor. And I go to the bathroom again and oh, little bit of mucus plug. I'm like, but you know what? Those grow back. Like it doesn't always mean that it is the official start, right? Those can grow back. So I call my husband and he'd been out plowing for 3 full days, like 72 hours, no sleep because we were having a blizzard for sure. Like in Buffalo, you don't call it a blizzard unless it actually is.
Mhm.
And he was like, well, the biggest thing, Lisa, is like, I need a heads up. Like, please don't call me and say like, we've got to mobilize to the birth center because I need to like get back to my truck and drop off this piece of equipment and make sure that I can clear the driveway and like all this stuff. And my husband's a real planner. And so I was like, yeah, this is pretty much a false alarm, like guaranteed. I'll make sure that I give you a heads up. And so I called my doula, my incredible doula, and she was like, so why don't we touch base in a few hours? Because I actually think this is going to pick up. And I'm like, I know that that's your job. And like, I respect that. And I appreciate you. I will touch base soon. Right. She's like, okay, don't leave me in the lurch either. Okay. So I didn't realize at the time, but I was definitely in spontaneous labor on his actual guest date, which what are the odds of that? And there was a literal snowstorm outside, of course. So I would say by like noon, I called my sister and I was like, I think this might be actually going down, which was super cool. And when I look back on that and we talk about it, such a special thing that she was kind of the first to know outside of my husband and my doula, because I did not want to alert the family just yet. I did not want to add any questions on when we were going to mobilize or why labor was taking as long as it might have taken and all the things. So I was very, very careful about that energy. And my sister is an incredible soul. So she was like perfect energy at the time. Yeah. And I would say like between 8 a.m. and noon, what was really beautiful is like, I kind of remember being in a time warp. I look out the window, it's just snowing like crazy, like, but it was beautiful because the sun was shining. And I'm running back and forth to the bathroom because at this point I've had probably 7 bowel movements. Okay.
We are cleaning house.
Cleaning house. And still I'm in denial a little bit. More mucus plug, right? Hip pain, all the things. But again, I was like, it could stop. This is daytime. I had convinced that my labor was going to start in the middle of the night. So I'm like, oh, it's daytime. This is no. And finally cleared out my schedule for work because I was still working from home because of COVID. And so I finally was like, I think I'm going to clear the calendar. And my doula calls me to check in, and I go through 2 pretty good contractions on the phone, and she said, I'm coming over. Which was really nice because that was never the original plan. We were all going to mobilize to the birth center and labor there because of the weather in Buffalo in February, and we wanted to be closer. And so that was funny, but really special that she came to me and immediately was like, you are in active labor, call your husband. So he came home and he was kind of scurrying around the house, packing his bag and things because I don't know, we didn't have anything ready. My stuff was ready, but he wanted to get some things together. And it was so funny. I don't remember this, but he will say that he's scurrying around the house, making sure he's got what he needs, actually switching the car seat to his pickup truck because it was that bad outside and we wanted better tires and all the things. And I'm having very loud vocal contractions and just riding the waves. And I'm yelling at him every 30 seconds. I'm like, just go take a nap. And in my brain, I was like, I could not get over the fact that he hadn't slept in days, even though he's really trained for this. But it was so funny. And after the birth, we joked about how he was like, you kept saying to take a nap. And in my brain, I'm thinking, how the hell am I supposed to sleep right now? You are roaring like a lion in the other room. But, you're just in a different headspace.
So different. Okay, so he's home. He's packing his bag.
Yep.
You're laboring with your doula at home. What happens next?
Yeah. So I think a lot of progress was made in that beautiful, silent solo time. From 8 a.m. until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it was just me and the baby and this house with snow coming down. And I'll never forget that. So I'm on the couch on all fours and riding those waves, and my water breaks in the movies where you hear it pop and there's this massive gush of water. All the things I read would never happen or so incredibly rare, right? So I jump off the couch and I call my husband AV and he was like, I can't believe you saved the couch. So we laugh about that too. And I distinctly remember water breaks, things rapidly picked up, which was super exciting. And that was the first time I had the thought of, oh, this is happening. This is happening right now.
I might be in labor.
For real. And I looked at my doula kind of in shock, full of water. And she said, okay, let's go take a shower. And I kind of remember thinking my brain didn't even know that would be the next logical step. So I took a shower, which was challenging, put on some super comfy, baggy clothes. And we started getting the truck ready with my husband lined it with the big tux pads or whatever because he was worried about his seats.
That's fair. That's fair.
Totally. And we set out. My doula followed us. She was very nervous about that drive. And I appreciate her so much for coming all the way out to me in a blizzard and then following us all the way to the birth center. Door to door, that would have only been a 35 minute drive. But it ended up being over an hour because there was road closures all over the place. There were stranded vehicles and roads blocked off. So my poor husband was trying to talk me through contractions, but also navigate this war zone of snow and on no sleep. But he is such the calm in the storm. So it was really great. But I always, and it's funny because since giving birth, I always say to my clients, if your car ride is not hell on earth, then you're going too early.
This is so great.
So I was that car ride was pretty rough, but it makes for a good story. So yeah, we got to the birth center around 6 p.m. And that's when we alerted our families that we were there. And I just walked in passed through the door frame and it was like a sanctuary.
Hmm.
All the dim lights, all the candles, warm big tub, big queen size bed. Like I felt like the atmosphere was exactly what I imagined in the dreams. And it was a very calming situation. I like tapped into my breath and I really just went into labor land and
Wow.
time stood still.
Hmm.
And I would say that the water was really the most incredible coping mechanism for me to just get through those waves. I spent a ton of time in the tub, all different movement. I mean, lunges and all fours and hip circles and, all the things to just try to engage this baby.
So was your
Yeah.
baby up high at this point? Did you feel like that was necessary?
He was low, but he
Mhm.
was, I think it's called a nuchal hand and
Oh, yeah.
compound presentation. So
Oh,
I labored for quite a while before feeling that urge to push. And I think that's why.
that makes
So
sense.
I couldn't tell you what station, but definitely probably not like engaged enough. We were a little surprised. Like, it's not that labor slowed, but it was kind of like, went through transition on the toilet. And I think that was the first time that I looked at my husband and I said, what if I can't do this unmedicated? And he's like, you're doing it, babe. Like, you're doing it right now.
We're not
And
getting back in the car, I can tell you that.
exactly. So it was really comforting and reassuring to hear, like, you're doing it. I was like, yeah, I freaking am right now.
Yeah.
And that kind of rejuvenated my energy.
Mhm.
And I got back into the tub, which I do remember the midwife assistant kind of like not agreeing on that next step. So it was kind of like one of those where you're like, should I, shouldn't I? But the water just felt so good. That was like, I only bring that up because it was like I had pulled out of labor land for just a split second and then I went back in. Yeah. And so we did all the things. Like at this point, it was let's get creative. I was on a stool. We did tug of war, like all these different, like crazy side lying, like which felt so much harder after transition. And then finally started to feel that urge to push. And I pushed for 3.5 hours. It was challenging, like not from the standpoint of the physicality. I really felt like strong and in my best fitness, but mentally that was challenging. I don't think as a first time I realized like how much time in between contractions there can be. And that really spread that out. And we started to see some heart rate stuff going on after like the 3.5 hour mark. And the midwife and her assistant went out into the hallway to like have a conversation. And I turned to my doula and I was like, that's not a good sign. And she's like, don't overthink it. I'm like, no, I feel like that's not a good sign. So they came back in and very like calmly said, we're not loving the heart rate right now. I think he's been, working with you to get out into the world for the last 3.5 hours. And so she basically said, I don't like to wait until the last minute if a hospital transfer is necessary. So we're going to keep at this for a little bit, but then I want to know how you feel about a transfer. And I said, well, let's just get to that moment and make
Mhm.
that decision. And I truly, truly remember kind of turning inward and having like a dialogue with my baby. And I was
Mhm.
like, it's you and me. Like, we are a team. We are going to get through this. Let's go. And I pushed him out.
Wow.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And he had his little hand up. And later, the midwife said that that was what such a challenge. But I appreciated that she did not tell me that in the moment. And I think part of that was just our relationship. I think she recognized that I didn't need to know that at that moment.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for that because I think that I was able to have a clearer mind.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. Man, Lisa, I love that.
Thank
That
you.
just beautiful concept of recognizing the connection that is true.
Yeah.
The connection is there. It is true. You can't be closer to somebody than growing inside of them.
Mhm.
Like there's no closer. So we know that that's real. But then for you to have the knowledge that or the intuition that there is a way for us to communicate.
Yeah.
There is such a deep connection, and for you to turn inward, have that conversation between yourself and your baby of, hey, look, like we're doing this. We're going to
Yeah.
do it right now. Here we go. That means something. Like, that is
Yeah.
so meaningful and such a beautiful story.
I appreciate that. I don't know if I've ever really like spent the time around that moment.
Mm.
And it's a really beautiful one. And the placenta was very delayed.
Oh, really?
And this was one of like, again, I'll call it a fear. I don't know if that's the right label, but one of my fears was if the placenta doesn't come out, that could be another reason for a hospital transfer
Mm.
or what I had read. And so I knew that our plan was giving it a good amount of time, like way more than you would get in a hospital around here at least. And then some homopathy under the tongue. I forget what exactly. And then if after a certain period of time, a shot of Pitocin, which I absolutely didn't want. My fear of needles is really intense. And so I was like, I do not want to get through all of this unmedicated to then have a shot of Pitocin in my thigh. And so about 20 minutes went by and they gave me that homopathy and then like another, I think 15 minutes. I could be wrong on the exact amount of time. And then it was again a conversation of, okay, so we don't want to wait too long for this. We've had this talk, where are you? How are you feeling about the Pitocin? And I pushed that placenta out.
I love it.
Yeah. So at 120, yeah. So, and then even cooler than that, after having Enzo on my chest and just the bliss of skin to skin, my midwife turned to my husband and said, do you want to cut the cord? And I think it had been like 50 minutes of beautiful, undisturbed, all the blood, all the beautiful cord blood. And he like turned white as a ghost and was like, and I said, yeah, no, he's not that guy. And I grabbed the scissors and I cut the cord myself. And that was such a cool moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Like that, I don't know, so much metaphor in that, like, okay, here we go. We're cutting this. We're choosing to release this and still connected. Like,
Yeah.
he's still on your chest. You're
So cool.
still this connection. Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. It was really a beautiful experience. And I'm so lucky to be able to say that.
Gosh. So what was obviously we've just heard about this immediate postpartum experience. Like, how did it go after that? Especially being in a birth center. We don't have as many birth center stories to hear. Like, how did that unfold at the birth center? Yeah.
So it was beautiful. Like, they left us alone. Everything was so undisturbed. Everything was so calm. We finally got my husband in his own bed and he slept because he was exhausted.
Yeah.
And he was going to be the one to drive us home. And so we were like, okay, go get some rest. Otherwise, they were going to be completely comfortable with us leaving within like 2 hours, which I loved. That was like one of my favorite things about that is I just wanted to be home. But it was okay that we made the decision to let him sleep, and he slept about 6 hours, and baby and I just laid breastfed. It was funny because everyone's like, oh, you're going to crash, and my doula went and took a nap and AV went and slept, and I was wide awake. I was like, I couldn't sleep right now if I wanted to. I wanted to relive the whole thing in my brain. As tired as I was, like I just wasn't ready for sleep. So Enzo and I just laid with him on my chest until my husband woke up. So we just had 6 hours of quiet, undisturbed beauty in a bed that very much felt like home. He drove us home after that.
Wow. I love these moments of connection that you're bringing up. You talked about at the beginning of your labor from 8 to noonish or 8 to 1, you had this time.
True.
You and your baby laboring together, this beautiful connection, just the two of you. And then postpartum, you have this experience again where you've got this other chunk of 6 hours or so where it's just the two of you seeing each other physically for the first time. That is, there's so much here, Lisa.
Yeah, he had like jet black, full head of hair, hairy back, which is so me and my genetics. And now it's hysterical because at 3.5, he's blonde. Apparently, my husband was a little blondie as a kid. So eventually those Italian genes on both sides are going to take over. But it's just so funny how much he changes. And I have to also say, like, because I think it's relevant. So God really does work in mysterious but very loud ways in my life, I say. And we rescheduled this recording, as you know, a couple of months back because I was going through a miscarriage, and it completely like paused my world, I will say, because that grief came in waves, and it really took me by surprise. So I first just have to thank you for your kindness and your space, during that time, because you reaching out of it was just very, very thoughtful. But in a very wild full circle twist today, like this morning, I dropped my 3.5-year-old Enzo off for his very first day ever, like away from family, because I got a last minute call that a spot had opened up at the homeschool co-op. And I've been like dreaming about this place for over a year. It's
Oh,
this like beautiful Montessori forest school, and it's very difficult to get a slot. And something just like popped up last week and it all lined up. And so literally this morning, I dropped him off and drove away with this like lump in my throat and 1,000 thoughts kind of like swirling in my mind. And I know that he is going to absolutely thrive here. Like in my gut, there is such power in knowing that he's going to have such a great experience, but my heart is like totally broken.
oh,
And not in like a bad way, right? Like I
right.
said this to myself on the way home, is like, it feels so fitting though to be here with you today, like revisiting my motherhood and like
Mm,
mompreneur journey. And so I just have to thank you for the space and the time and this conversation, because who would have thought that on that same morning I would
mhm.
be driving home from my first ever drop off ever, Yeah.
I'm covered in chills right now.
Yeah.
It's
It's
beautiful.
pretty amazing.
Oh, Lisa, also just the connection there of, I remember dropping my daughter off for her first day of forest school. It's just like
Oh,
the specialness of that. And it is unbelievable. You will not believe how Enzo grows.
I
And
can't
that
wait. I
it's
can't wait.
just, oh, it's amazing. But I can so deeply connect with that feeling.
Yeah.
I remember driving down the mountain after having dropped her off and being like, is she really
Yeah.
okay, like, is she gonna have a good time? Is she gonna be
Hmm.
okay without me? And, oh my goodness, now she's the leader of the pack.
I bet.
It's just so special. So thank you for sharing that too,
Yeah.
because what a journey. Also very interesting. This was our first day of homeschool today. We
Right. And
started
when you
pretty
said that,
early.
I said, oh, I have a story for that.
Yes, that is so crazy. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
We just decided, they finished their forest school camp last week, and my middle daughter, she just turned 6, and I had decided,
Oh.
okay, we're gonna wait until she turns 6, and
Yep.
then we're gonna start schooling for her. So
Love it.
how sweet! What a
Yeah.
special time for both of us to be able to be together and share in this
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a lot of gratitude around the birth world and this business, and just my ability to send him to my dream
Mm,
spot for him, because I know not every family has those opportunities or options. And to be able to kind of like tune into my intuition at this stage of his life. I mean, this is like a couple hours twice a week. He's like, it's basically like a 3.5-year-old program. It's not full school or anything, but it's a big deal for us.
yeah.
So I'm just grateful to have like a business that supports that lifestyle, because it helps me feel like I am able to listen to my instinct on what I
Mm.
really want for him and for us.
Gosh, I love
Yeah.
it. And I'd actually love to kind of jump into that.
Yeah.
Anyway, you talked about how your birth experiences have shaped you and really shaped your business. Can you share more about what that's looked like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started after the birth of my son. I just like threw myself into birth work. I quit my fancy, high paying corporate job. And I was like, if I'm going to work while I mother, then it needs to fill my soul. And the corporate life was not that for me.
Mhm.
And so I really shifted into birth work very, very rapidly. And I started coaching pregnant women on how to have an unmedicated out of hospital birth experience. And I felt very called to that because of the landscape, and especially locally where I live. Just the options are getting worse. It's pretty scary. And that really kind of like broke me open in a way that I don't even know if I can describe. And I know that you can probably relate to this, but like entrepreneurship is like the biggest self-discovery journey you'll ever take.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just kind of threw myself into selling myself. And I always hesitate to say that, because the word sales and selling has a connotation, right out of the gate, especially in heart-led work. And I found myself being booked solid. and having the ability to really choose and draw in and call in my ideal perfect mothers, and work never felt like work. Selling never felt like selling. And very naturally and organically and very quickly, I started getting doulas kind of like sliding into my DMs going, Lisa, like, what are you doing on Instagram that I'm not doing? Or how are you helping moms understand the value of your packages? Like, what is going on? Because we're just seeing you everywhere. We're seeing your name dropped and referred all over the place. And I truly was like, I am just doing everything that I've always done, which is like soulful, self-trusting sales. Because the way I feel about a birth business and motherhood and the interconnectedness of that is that there are so many parallels, like advocacy. Okay. Very, very true in both selling, marketing, and mothering. Okay. Intuition, trusting your gut, doing it your way, resistance, leading without certainty, highlighting the messy middle and owning your story. And so I started just giving tips and tricks. And I literally just kind of like woke up one day in a mentorship role for doulas. And it happened so naturally. And the connection that I had with these women was so profound. Like everyone in my DMs were mothers that were trying to build birth businesses to help support their families, rooted in all of the right things, all of the most incredible values. And it just felt so good. And so now I really am more of a full-time doula mentor. And I feel that I've been called into this role because I can almost serve even more of the pregnant and postpartum mamas this way. And that's how I really feel. And I always say that like sales is just a mirror. And this is always a tough swallow for some, but like the way that you feel about selling is the way that you feel about yourself.
Wow.
And so a lot of the work that I do with doulas and mompreneurs is to build confidence. And it's not the sexy marketing. Like it's not what I lead with. I don't like lead with, hey, I'm going to teach you how to be more self-confident in order to, grow your doula business, because nobody believes that to be true on the front end. But I will be able to say, like, I will help you sign more of the most incredible aligned dream clients that you ever have in your life and be more fulfilled. And then once they're in my world, we work on confidence.
Guess what? Guess what the problem is?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just could talk about it all day. And like really just to answer your question, I feel like birth taught me how to trust my body. And now I help other women like trust their voice.
I can see it. I can hear it. I can feel it. It just makes so much sense. And you are right. These lessons and what we glean in motherhood, it transfers so significantly into like woman-led business as well. Particularly that ability to trust yourself, the understanding that you do have intuition, you do have instincts. Let's really dive into them and see how that impacts everything that you create, not just the babies, but everything that you create.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. And one thing that I like to highlight when I talk about all of this is that I've really built my business on like vulnerability and just being freaking real, because there's been so many curveballs. Okay. There's been so many moments of self-doubt. There's been heartache. There's been all the waves and the natural ups and downs. But I love to bring that to my business and to my audience, because that's how I really connect with people, is to say, like, I don't have it all together. I'm in the messy as AF middle, and I'm making mistakes left and right. But you know what? We're all in this together. And I have found that what really helps me kind of differentiate myself as a coach is that I want to get on your level. I've been there before if I'm not in it myself, but we can rise together.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? The other thing that I think is really important in terms of both motherhood and business is the realization that failure happens. Like, you're
Absolutely.
going to fail at things. You are going to do it in a way that you're like, oh, that didn't work. And then because you have that information, you get to grow.
Yeah.
And so this fear of, and I think you even mentioned it at one point of just like, I don't want to mess up. I want to do it right. Like, I want to do it right. Yes, of course. We all want to do it right. And to get to that place where we are doing it right, we're probably going to do it wrong a couple ways.
Absolutely.
First, good, good. Failing is learning and it's growing. And that's whether you're in motherhood or business or both.
Yeah. And I think that's a common theme throughout your podcast, like in an indirect or
Mm,
more direct way. Like I've listened to so many beautiful episodes, and I think that why I'm drawn to you and your work is that you show the human side of things, and
mm,
that you really fight against what I'll call perfectionism. And I think
mm,
that's why I really vibe with you. Without getting too deep into it, I come from a world of growing up as a dancer. And there is a real perfectionism tendency there that I've had to fight against my entire life. And I would be, remiss if I also didn't highlight the fact that like disordered eating is often linked to perfectionism as well.
yeah.
And so I've really, really had to come to terms with like showing up in the raw, messy form of me
Mm,
and being comfortable with kind of like putting myself out there and knowing that I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And so a lot of the work that I love to do with women is really bringing us back to ourselves. And every time we face like resistance, fear, loss, like coming back to ourselves and realize I know what I'm doing. I can trust myself and I don't need effing permission.
mm,
And that is really the energy that I want like every woman to walk into her birth and her business with, because energy sells.
mm.
And if you don't believe in yourself, someone will pick up on that. And then you're not going to be able to make the incredible impact that you were put on this earth to make. And so for me, it's a full circle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lisa, I have just loved this so much.
Me
Like,
too.
what a delightful way to start my day, spending
Oh,
time with you, hearing this beautiful story, and just so much depth of message that you have just given so much for everyone to think about. Mothers and you and I know both so many times, like in your experience, motherhood really pushes us out into, doing what we're passionate about. And so many of us, that is related to motherhood. So we do become mompreneurs. And so for you to be able to share both your motherhood journey, but also this beautiful aspect of what it means to sell from the heart, just incredible stuff. Would you mind sharing with people where they can learn more about you, about what you offer, how they could work with you if they want to?
yeah, absolutely. This has just been a joy and a really incredible story to put on the story of like my son's first day of school. So I just appreciate you so much. And before I blub and sob, I'd love to connect on Instagram. It's the Lisa V, and that's VEE. I also have a podcast called Loudmouth Lisa.
Which I just cannot get over how much I love that name. I just love it so
I
much.
appreciate that. And then if you're interested in going a little deeper, I have a free resource for doulas, and it is 3 consult questions to help book yourself out. And it is
Ooh,
soulful sales in all of its glory. And I think that you'd really love to dive into that. So I can send you that to link in the show notes if you'd like.
please, that would be phenomenal. I cannot wait for everyone to get their hands on it. Lisa,
Yay.
it was an absolute honor and joy. Thank you so much for coming on the Happy Home Birth podcast.
Thanks for having me, Caitlin. It was incredible.
Are we in love with Lisa or what? My goodness, what a powerful story. As we head into this week's episode roundup, I have a few points that are just begging to be shared. Number 1, connection. We see the theme of connection flowing through Lisa's story, and I think that we also see connection in the way that Lisa tells her story. Lisa is so clearly a connector. One of my favorite parts of this interview was hearing the beauty in Lisa's connection with her son, Enzo, from the very beginning. She spent time dancing with him in utero, and she felt this pull their physical connection together. During the first part of the day, as she went into labor, she spent time connecting with him as she labored alone. Then, during her pushing phase, we see her turn inward to reconnect with her baby and to tell him that they were going to work together to push him out now. And they did. And then, immediately postpartum, Lisa spent those 6 hours that her husband needed to sleep connecting individually with this beautiful little soul that was now on the outside. As I think of Lisa stepping into this new era of motherhood where she allows Enzo to go spread his wings through beginning his new co op, I think of how that connection is what is allowing that little boy the confidence to try new things. Lisa cut the cord after her birth and traded one connection for another. And she, like all of us as mothers, will experience those cord cutting moments again and again. The connection didn't end when she cut the cord, but it transformed. And here she is again with a transforming connection as her little one starts something new. My goodness, the depth and beauty of growing and changing while maintaining tethered to one another. That's amazing. And next, I want to emphasize the power of what Lisa is sharing with other mothers, women, and mompreneurs through her deep understanding of sales. She sees that her ability to trust herself and to know and accept the value that she brings to others is what makes herself and the women that she works with successful. These very same lessons that she's learned through motherhood, to listen to her instincts, to be the vibrant, bold mother and woman that she was designed to be, that is her gift to her family, and that is her gift to the world and those whom her work touches. I am truly in awe of Lisa. She is just such a real, deep, lovely woman and now friend. What a gift this episode was for me, and I know it was for you as well. Be sure to check the show notes to find Lisa's podcast, social media, and free resources. That's all I've got for you for today. I'll see you back here next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Are you looking to extend the home birth support, encouragement, and education? Join us in our Facebook group, Happy Home Birth Podcast Community, and check us out on Instagram at Happy Home Birth Podcast.